Lynch, who was former director of communications and public relations for the Buffalo Bills. Before that, he had, a path there and everything. He'll explain that later. But we just have a few quick announcements. Cam, would you like to share?
So hi everyone. So out of Rowan PRaction, I serve as AVP of Public Relations and Special Events for SGA. It's a really great opportunity. I'm trying to find someone to fill my shoes for next year. So if you're a senior, sorry, this doesn't really apply to you, but if you're staying next year, it's a really great opportunity. I've been doing actual PR work, actually speaking to media, building those relationships, doing social media, event planning, like back to the borough. It's been a really great experience for me, and especially like learning. I've been talking about it a lot in interviews. It is open right now for applications. Those close on Friday. If you have any more questions, you can definitely email me. You do get 1/3 off your tuition paid, so highly recommend. And it's a really great experience, especially if you're going into PR. But yeah, I'll put my SJ email in the chat if you have any more questions.
Vanessa, do you have anything?
The only update that I have for you all right now is that in 2 weeks, we will have our annual Organ Donor Day event. So I'd highly recommend that you follow us on Instagram if you are not already at Rowan PRSSA. We're going to do hopefully a couple giveaways, and you'll find the donation link there as well. So more information is to come in your emails and on social platforms. So look out for that. And that's all for me today.
Okay, so I think we should be ready to go. First things first, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your time at Rowan, and how you got to where you are today?
Okay, I was a resident in Glassboro, New Jersey, and went to Glassboro High School because my father became dean of students at Glassboro State in 65, and so my high school years were spent in Glassboro. I went to a postgraduate program at Valley Forge Military Academy, and then as a freshman at Gettysburg College, but I really didn't like Gettysburg, didn't do very well either, to be honest. And so I enrolled at Glassboro State, now Rowan, and as an education major. And actually I graduated with a degree in education, special education, and elementary education. I played sports. Well, first of all, when I got to Glassboro State, because I had been at Gettysburg College, I was ineligible to play on athletic teams for a year because of I was considered a transfer. But at the same time, in the previous year or two, I had been a sports writer with the local weekly newspaper there in the Glassboro area, and wrote a lot of stuff, columns and game accounts and stories about the college and the high school and things like that. So I had a lot of writing experience, not journalism, so to speak, but I had a couple of very good people who advised me and helped me out with things. So anyway, by the time I got into what then was Glassboro State as a freshman, after already been in another college, I became the student sports information director because I had written a lot of stories, and the athletic director asked me if I would do it as a work scholarship program to do the publicity for the athletic teams. So I did that at Glassboro for basically 4 years. While I played, and the next year I played football and baseball. I was the basketball public address announcer. I wrote weekly press releases and things on the weekly schedule and who's playing and who's the leading scorer and all those types of things for all the different sports. Initiated some new things, like we started a media guide for women's basketball. They started women's soccer, and I did some of the publicity for that. So I got experience in all around experience in a lot of different sports. When I'm gonna say several times that being in the right place at the right time, timing is a lot of how you get jobs or are lucky enough to be interviewed for jobs and that type of thing. I saw a notice for a local college in Philadelphia looking for a sports information director. That was after I graduated from Rowan, and it was a situation where I applied, and it ended up being St. Joseph's College in Philadelphia, the Big Five basketball school, who at the time when they advertised, they just had a blind advertisement, didn't have who it was. Anyway, I was interviewed and got the job, and basically got the job because of my sports writing experience, my student sports information director experience that I had done media guides and other press releases and other things like that. So I did have some background and experience in that, in what would be a Division III school. And I was selected to be the sports information director at St. Joe's. I lived in Glassboro and I commuted to St. Joe's up on City Line Avenue every day. So it was a 45-minute commute each way, but I did that for basically 3 years. And while I was at St. Joe's, I became friends with the guy that had preceded me. His name was Ernie Accorsi, who ended up later being the general manager of the New York Giants and general manager of the Cleveland Browns. And he had moved way up in the National Football League. And Ernie and I became friends. He liked to go to the basketball games. St. Joe's played on Saturday night in the Palestra, and he would come up and go to the games. And I would get to talk to him a lot. We became friends. And about a year and a half later, he said to me, "I hope you don't mind, but I put your name on a list for a possible job with the National Football League." Now, I never would have known how to apply for a job with the NFL. They're just not, there's no publicity to say, yeah, these jobs are open. But he recommended me to the guy that was the general manager. And I went up, was interviewed among 3 or 4 other people, and I got the job. So I moved from New England, from St. Joe's in Philadelphia to New England, to the Patriots, and spent basically 4 years there with them, including two teams that went to the playoffs. And I was the assistant not sports information director, publicity director of public relations. I was the assistant, and that gave me some good experience under a very good older man who was the director. And while I was at New England, this is going to be a long story for a minute or two, just to tell you about relationships. First, Ernie Accorsi was the one that recommended me for the opportunity. So he's the first guy. While I was with New England, there was an assistant general manager. His name was Peter Hadhazy. And Peter had been in an NFL office position before, then moved to New England, spent 3 or 4 years there. I worked with him. He was hired as the general manager of the Cleveland Browns. And after about 2 months, called me and said that they would like to hire me to come to Cleveland and be the assistant general manager. So I took that job and moved to Cleveland. Spent 5 years there with several pretty good teams that lost right down to the end in the last second of a couple of playoff games. Kind of dramatic, but unfortunately on our side, we never got on the right side of some of those games. But I spent time there. While at Cleveland, another fellow from outside, he was with the Canadian League and the old World Football League, another league, the Pro Football League, was an administrator in those leagues. He was hired as the general manager of the Buffalo Bills. His name is Bill Polian. Bill Polian is now in the Pro Football Hall of Fame as the general manager. And he hired me to come to Buffalo, and I was director of public and community relations, which we broke that up into, it was 2 jobs and we merged it into one. We'll explain it as we go along if you'd like, but the community relations side was working with charities and working, United Way Fund and player appearances, players doing charity work, adopting Make-A-Wish or some of those other types of things, and spending time off the field in charity work. And I had to coordinate that. And then I'll get into public relations later, because I know you have a question about that on your chart. And then spent from 86 to 2006, basically as in public relations. I later became what they called director of archives, because we were attempting to build a new museum for the Buffalo Bills, and I spent quite a bit of time trying to get that organized and trying to get people for donations and things like that to build a new museum. That actually never happened, but it was a big job for me for a while, trying to accumulate everything. And then I retired in 2006, and that was 34 years in the National Football League from the time I started in 1972. So that's sort of the background, kind of weaving it through some different stories. But the end result is you need to develop a reputation, and that's what I said about internships and entry-level jobs, that people recognize that you do have talent. I'm not bragging when I say that. I had a certain amount of talent, or certainly I wouldn't have been able to move along. So it's an interesting situation where if people recognize, like you're loyal, you do things that are good for the team. Loyal is probably the biggest word I can say as far as in the National Football League. If you are loyal to the organization, the owner knows that, the general manager knows that, the people that work in the office know that, as they are loyal also. And it's such a big battle in the NFL with 32 teams to have a winning team and to have a winning organization, that it makes it one of the most important things of all. But the loyalty and all that went along with knowing people who seemed to think that I had some talent, and in each case recommended me for something along the way. I never applied for a job except for that first St. Joe's job. That was the only job that I ever actually applied for. Everything else I was invited to interview and ended up getting a job. So it's networking, and there's things like that. You hear those terms all the time, and there's some luck involved. I think being in the right place at the right time when your opportunity comes, that's another important thing. That when you do get the opportunity, you're ready. You have the talent. You've developed the talent, and you are, as I said, ready for the job.
Awesome. Thank you. Do any other members have any questions they'd like to ask? If so, just click the hand reaction thing. Vanessa, I see you have a question.
Yeah, could you explain your responsibilities that you would have on like a daily basis working in the NFL?
In public relations.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So as I said, I had a little bit of a balance between public relations and community relations.
Mm-hmm.
We had a second person who was director of media relations. So I was the boss and he was number two, but the fact was he worked with the media on a day-by-day basis, and I did overall during the week.
Okay.
I made all the announcements, anytime we've had something we needed, a trade or some other announcing a new schedule or anything. We went through everything from getting new jerseys, and colors and things like that, and several major announcements. I sort of led that, and the other fellow did the work with the media. The media on a day-by-day basis was hosting them at the practice. That whenever the team practiced, in those days we had open practice, so the media could stand right down on the sideline of the field and watch the practices. They don't do that anymore. They're not allowed. They have to do it. They can go on the field before the practice and see that who's hurt or who back on the field again, that type of thing. But then they have to leave. So in our day, we had to babysit the media too, is what I used to say. Somebody had to be out on the field the whole time that the media was anywhere near the team. So, but in the public relations side of it, as I mentioned, a lot of writing. Did the media guide, which is in most cases was an almost 200-page booklet. I'm sure, hopefully, you've seen some of them in the different sports, the college sports, pro sports, and so that took time in the springtime and before the training camp started in July to get a media guide out for the year. You know, from everything from dealing with the printer to photography to you know, the writing of most of the assembling of the information, all that type of stuff. So that's basically the other side of public relations was television, which during the time that I was in the league just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Every week in the NFL in the fall, there's a game, obviously. Now 17 weeks, used to be 16 weeks. So you're home 8, on the road 8. And the responsibilities for that with the television people is really significant. They pay millions and millions of dollars for the rights to broadcast the game, and they expect to get information. They expect to be treated in a first-class manner, the announcers and the producers and those people. And it's something you have to do. It wasn't hard, but it had to be done. We had to set up, for example, on a Saturday, a Sunday game. On a Saturday, we would have the media would come in Friday night, and Saturday morning they would come to the stadium. This is the television media. They could watch the announcers and the producers and could watch the practice of the team on Saturday morning, which is really just running around in shorts. And it's not, I mean, yes, they go through plays, but it's not the same kind of a practice as you would during the week. And they then, after the practice is over, interview at least 3 or 4 players, always the quarterback, always the head coach, and then 3 or 4 other influential players so they are ready for the game. So when you see a game on Sunday and they say, yesterday we talked to quarterback Jim Kelly, and he said that, you know, he likes to throw to the right side instead of the left side. He likes to do this or not do that. Or you know, quite a few of the other players. And our head coach, who was at our time, a guy by the name of Marv Levy, was just an outstanding, I guess you would say, spokesman, because he was so well. Some of these coaches, unfortunately, aren't that gifted as far as really being able to talk to the media on camera and do well. But Marv was just excellent at it. So it was a pleasure to be with him, because I didn't have to tell him anything except bring him up to date maybe on something. In other places, the PR person has to say to the coach, now don't forget, you got to do this, you got to announce that, and don't say this because, you know, somebody's hurt, don't tell them. And a lot of advice that has to be given to coaches. I mostly did not have to have that responsibility because Marv Levy was just excellent at what he did already. I did make some suggestions, and we would always say, here, remember, here's 2 or 3 things. We made a trade yesterday. Don't forget to announce that. You know, we have a bye week next week. Don't forget to mention that. Things like that. I made a list of 4 or 5 things that needed to be covered, but I didn't have to give him advice on what to say. So, and dealing with the television and radio too, because there's national radio broadcasts. And they would come in and they'd want to interview players and coaches. So we had to take care of that. Then when on the road, we had to take care of setting up everything from the air transportation, the airline we're going to fly on, the buses to pick the team up at the airport, bring them to a hotel that had to be booked ahead of time, ordering all the meals that especially the morning meal before the game and what the players were going to eat, all that kind of stuff. So it was busy on the road too, and a different set of responsibilities than the home games. One more thing on the home games, the press box, which is where all the media sit, That all has to be set up ahead of time. The seats have to all be assigned to different media, from the home media group to the visiting media. Visiting media has to have equal access to everything that the home team has, including sitting close to the 50-yard line in both cases, home and visitor. And it's important, and you need to be professional in the way you run the press box, which is another set of responsibilities that you have as a home game. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Leo, you have a question?
Well, actually, you said you went to Glassboro High School?
Yes.
I went there, I graduated 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I guess, were you in the what they call now the intermediate school?
Yes,
'Cause-
that's right. Yep, the intermediate.
Oh,
That was the old high school. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to the new building,
Uh-huh.
and my friend's mom, she graduated in '85. So when Ronald Reagan came here, she has a picture of her shaking his hand, and
Ronald Reagan came?
well, remember in the '80s he came here, or you didn't hear about that?
Yeah, no, but I thought you were talking about where the president of the United States, Lyndon Johnson, came, and he actually spoke at our
Oh.
graduation, Glassboro
No,
State graduation.
Right.
This was Reagan you're talking about?
Yeah, I think you mean Johnson and Kosygin.
Yeah, it was
Right.
that was interesting. And I had luckily had the experience of helping with the media and for the people at the Johnson Kosygin conference. I at the time was working in the summer, and they said, "Hey, we need everybody out there to organize it, help put them in the right place." And so it was an interesting situation, and I learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm told like it was the same situation. Well, President Reagan started the whole tradition of like presidents doing high school visits for the graduations, and he just showed up out of nowhere. They didn't plan it there, so they locked down Delsey Drive, 55. Like they closed every major road, and then they set up a whole teleprompter in the gym, in the auditorium, and yeah, they even in the library they have like a little like I guess like a document just like memorializing like his visit.
Oh yeah, not many schools get a visit from the president. That's for sure. So Glassboro,
Right.
the town has been blessed.
Yeah, I mean the fact that he was the first one to do it in United States history, and then like the other event that happened with Lyndon Johnson.
Yep.
It's just, here in this small town.
Yep. That's interesting.
Yeah, very.
And do you have a question?
Oh, okay. So hi.
Hi.
So my question is, so what motivated you to continue like your field of career when you first started? I know that you've said that you didn't like apply for the job for the, the NFL PR. So I just wanted to know like what motivated you to continue like something that you were not familiar with, or like something that, someone signed you up for.
Let's see. Let's see how I want to put this. I always ever since I played sports, I always felt that I wanted to work in sports. I thought that would be as a teacher and a coach. And so I ended, so my second college was at Glassboro State, and I ended up getting a degree, and I spent a couple of years as a high school football and baseball coach before I ended up going to St. Joe's. I didn't mention that because it wasn't that important right at the beginning. But so I always wanted to work in sports, and I worked on a recreation commission in town. I worked summer recreation playground jobs. I helped organize basketball leagues and things like that for kids. So I was always interested in sports and always wanted to work in sports. Didn't know how to do that. There were no, at least as far as I know, there were no programs in sports administration that say if you graduate, you get a degree and you got a chance to, possibly get work in sports. And that's basically how people are hired now. You almost have to have, background in sports administration to get it. I don't know that my old way as a sports writer for a local team, for a local newspaper, and then going on and doing work in college would be the way that people do it today. I have a question. I don't know if you even know this. Is Sheila Stevenson still there as a sports information director? Or who is the person in charge, Whatever. Okay. I know.
I think Sheila's gone and I cannot think of who it is. I'll check
That's
though.
okay. No, it doesn't make it everything. I knew Sheila quite well because we crossed paths 3 or 4 times for different reasons. So one of them was because a Glassboro State football player ended up playing for the Cleveland Browns, and so the whole time he was at Cleveland, Dino Hall was when he was with the Browns. I was in contact with Sheila many times. She was quite a bit younger then too. So okay, so that's fine. I just didn't know if she was still there. There is opportunity. I don't know how it's set up with Rowan as far as opportunities to work, either a work scholarship situation or something involving sports publicity. But if there's a way to be involved in that, whether you're attached to a softball team or a volleyball team or something else, and doing the scorekeeping and writing a press release or something about it, that's a good way to get your foot in the door if you're really interested in sports as a public relations opportunity. Of course, public relations, there's hundreds of different types of jobs, and many of them pay very well, but there's still a lot that people need to volunteer for it. I know a couple of people who volunteered for a political campaign, and because of the political campaign, they got to know some people and got to be known as a good worker and reliable, and they ended up getting jobs in the publicity side of business. Not, of course, not sports, but it was still a way to get into the network.
Awesome. Vanessa, you have a question?
Yeah. So if you had to pick one, what is your favorite moment from your career?
Well, I don't know if you know the background, but the Buffalo Bills went to 4 consecutive Super Bowls from 90 to 93. We won the American Football Conference, and then the American Football Conference champion plays the National Football Conference champion for the Super Bowl. And so we played in the Super Bowl 4 times. And I think the most thrilling was winning the championship game of the American Conference to go the next week to the Super Bowl. We had to fight so hard and came right down to the end of a game and won the game and ended up going into our first Super Bowl, of which we're 4 in a row. We're the only team that ever went to 4 consecutive Super Bowls. We didn't win one of them, which is something that we were all disappointed, but it was quite an achievement for that team and that coach to do that. And we had to be all over that. In fact, the interesting part was when the Bills won the AFC championship, it was a home game, and the Super Bowl was the following Sunday in Tampa. So we finished the game at 4:00. We won the game. We were just cheering and having a great time. And I was on a plane at 9:00 to go to Tampa to do the advanced publicity work for the game. And the same day, the New York Giants won their game. So they won the NFC championship. And so their PR director had to go to Tampa also to do all the setup work and get ready for the following Sunday Super Bowl. So I would say that's probably the most thrilling. I mean, there's been some great games. We had the greatest comeback in NFL history. We were down 27 points and came back to win a game late in the game and kick a field goal in overtime, and some of the thrilling results of games. And I could say personally that working with some of the great players and getting to know them so well it's always been a thrill for me. I would always have been a fan, and you can't really be a fan when you're in public relations very much. You got to keep it down. But still, I work with some fantastic players who are still good friends of mine to this day. So and coaches and other people that work within the organization. So I think relationships might be another of one of the biggest things.
That's awesome. And actually our professor, Dr. Fitzgerald, she mentioned in the chat that she's from Buffalo and she had to watch them lose all of the Super Bowls in a row.
Yeah, that's right. She did. She sent me a note. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny, first we're talking about this. This is interesting too. You know, I've been written up in the Rowan alumni magazine a few times. I got a couple of awards, whatever, over the years. But it wasn't until the lady from the alumni office called, whatever it was, actually it was a email thing, saying any alumni that would be interested in, working with students and telling them your story, let us know. So I sent back a reply and just said, if you're interested, I'm retired, but I worked a lot, 34 years. And if you'd like, the students would like to talk to me, that would be fine. And that's the first time over all those years. I mean, in 34 years, I was in the NFL and actually came back to Glassboro several times, but never did anything with students and, career advice or any of that kind of stuff. So it's interesting how it came up.
I actually have a very interesting question because I'm a huge NFL fan, and you said you were an assistant GM for a while.
Yes.
I know times have changed a little bit, but what was that like?
Well, the general manager that I worked for was a very strong person. And so I was his assistant. And as would be said, he told me what he wanted me to do and, gave me responsibility. I signed contracts for most of the low round draft choices, the free agents, the college free agents that were that came into to the organization. I went through with the agents and signed the contracts. And I had other responsibilities at the time, like our old stadium in Cleveland was just a dump. And so we had to modernize the locker rooms and modernize the press box. And that was my responsibility during a couple of the seasons, was basically to get the place in shape. I also had to take care of the training facility, which was a separate facility from the stadium, stadium game day operations, making sure the field is ready, the lines are correct, the scoreboard works, all those types of things for a home game. And then, as I mentioned, I did team travel and quite a few other things. So I was an administrative assistant, an assistant general manager by title. And I had a lot of different responsibilities, but I was never in total charge because that's the general manager and he had all of his own responsibilities to do.
That makes sense. But Leo, I see you have a question.
Yeah, it was kind of related to what Dave said. Well, like I don't know if you know, but like one of the like I was a freshman when he was a senior, but like Corey Clement, like he became a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
That's high school though, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah. He plays for the Eagles. He's a good player.
Yeah, like like one hit wonder, like he won like first Super Bowl. Like I remember I don't know. I mean, I was just joking with my friends, so I remember just seeing him on TV and I was like, wow, look, he's crying, like he's so in disbelief. But I mean, that was a big deal. And
there's a second Glassboro high school player in the NFL, but I can't think of his name.
Yeah, Greg Brackett, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted.
One kid played at Rutgers and then went to the NFL. Yep.
Oh, you say that again? I'm sorry, you cut out.
No, I said one of those players played at Glassboro High School and then went to Rutgers, and then after Rutgers signed in the NFL.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A lot of them, like I just remember a lot of people, like when I was there, they tried doing what Corey did. just I guess they kind of like saw like the footsteps he was in. But I was just gonna ask you, have you seen, or I mean, because you were in the industry for a long time, like how has it changed a lot how they recruit like the players, or like how has that evolved over time?
The recruiting college players you're talking about? Or
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Well, there's a group of about 8 or 9 scouts whose jobs is to go out and go to colleges and look at players that are in college, give ratings of what they think, whether they're good enough to make it or not good enough and all that kind of stuff. And they spend a lot of time in the scouting department, we call a personnel department, and then get together in a month or 2 before the draft, which is usually in April, and they try to rank the players all across the country, who they think are the top 50, top 100 players across the country, and also what the team needs, what type of player they need. If they need a wide receiver or they need a linebacker, then they will try to recommend who's the best linebacker or the best 2 or 3 linebackers that we could draft. And so that's the player personnel department that does that. And that's a big job. They're traveling all fall. In fact, they sometimes come to some games on Sunday, either home or away, but the rest of the time they're on the road, basically 7 days a week, going to different colleges for about 2 or 3 months. So it's a big job to be a college scout for an NFL team.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask?
Looking at the questions that you sent me, I just want to see if I covered everything that I wanted to.
Dennis, I put the name of our AD in the chat.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, that's fine.
And
Yeah.
did you know Don Bagan?
Oh, yeah. In fact, he was the one that started it.
I
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
There's the other guy that was there, and I was trying to think of his name.
Tony Fulginiti?
No. I'll think of it after I'm off, I think, probably. He taught classes. Yeah, Don Bagan is he still around, or is he probably retired?
No, he died about 8 years ago.
Oh, did he? I'm sorry to hear. I guess I knew that. I just forgot.
Yeah, he died in his 60s. He was young.
Yeah. Yeah. They used to have their offices, if it's 2 or 3 little offices across the railroad tracks on the front of the campus there.
Triad, I know, that was horrible.
Yeah.
We moved a couple times since then.
Yeah, my father had been the dean of students, and then was a professor in the education department, taught mostly graduate educational school law and those types of courses, wrote a few books on it for a textbook type of publications. And he had an office in the Triad. I remember that.
Oh my gosh, what a disaster that place was. Anyway, Don hired me a long time ago, 27 years ago, but I just figured you must have known him if you were there for the summit.
I'm sorry?
I said, I figured you must have known him if you were there for the summit.
Yeah. And that was interesting. That whole summit thing, I don't know if the students know the story, but
it's amazing.
I think it was a Wednesday night at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Every night there was an NBC News show that broadcast every night nationally, and they come on. It was called Huntley Brinkley Report, and those the 2 men that broadcast. They came on, and their first announcement was, "We have a major announcement to breaking news," as they say now, but and that we've just learned that President Lyndon Johnson and Alexei Kosygin from Russia will meet tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock at a small college in southern New Jersey named Glassboro State College in the living room of the president's home. Now, about 5 minutes after they announced this on national television, which is the first time anybody had heard about it, 5 minutes later, the phone rings in the president's home, and the governor of New Jersey says to President Robinson at the time, I just volunteered your living room for a for a major conference between two world leaders. The next morning at 10 o'clock, a helicopter landed on the pitcher's mound of the baseball field, and out came the president of the United States. And Kosygin was at the United Nations. That's why they were able to do it. And they drove down from the United Nations in New York. They shut down the New Jersey Turnpike, completely shut down from end to end. And they drove onto campus, and then they had their meeting. And at 4 o'clock, they came back, and this was all within 24 hours. Everything had been, it was an amazing amount of people in a crowd that had to be taken care of, media. At 4 o'clock, they came out onto the porch of Hollybush, and they said, "We had such a good meeting. We're coming back tomorrow." And everybody that had been working this went, "Oh no, not again." 2 days in a row. Next day, they did the same thing. And so they had it was called at that time the Spirit of Hollybush. Hollybush is the name of that old president's home. And the spirit of that was really amazing. It kind of broke the tension between Russia and the United States. So it was a big deal.
What they didn't know, what you guys don't know, is there was no internet. So they literally put like 1,000 telephones with plug-in wires in the SB gym. And that's how the reporters came. I mean, the reporters were there from Life and Time. This was no small thing. Like every reporters flew in from all over the country, and they had to make this work with these, landline telephones. Can you imagine? So it was quite an undertaking, and Don Bagan was in charge of the whole thing, and he's the one that started our graduate program and was very well known for school public relations. So it's just kind of a cool thing. And then I was, hired by him and worked with him for years.
One of the things in that gym, in the SB gym, was teletype machines that they put in to send out information. That you don't even know what they are now. I don't even know what you would call them now, that type of thing. But to send out written information, they had teletype machines in all different languages, Russian, Japanese, Chinese, whatever. And they were transmitting from SB Gym to around the world with notes and information and stuff like that on that conference. It was Summit Conference. That was quite a thing. Biggest thing ever in Glassboro, for sure. I mean, just because of the international reputation that they got. Yep, that was really something. Now,
Awesome.
I'm going to look up the list one more time, but I just want to see if I hit everything. One major crisis that you had to deal with. That's a question. I'll tell you that one because as a public relations director, you get to give out the good news, and sometimes you have to give out the bad news, or you have to decide how you're going to give out the bad news. In our case, one of the things that happened was a murder that happened, and that was O.J. Simpson, who was a former Buffalo Bills player who, well, whatever you believe, but he was found innocent of killing his wife. But that whole time, my phone must have rung 100 times an hour with everybody that wanted information, but what they were really asking me for was, well, do you know what blood type O.J. Simpson is? Or, can you give me information on his background of different things? Has he ever been in trouble? The questions that are a lot harder to answer than how many yards did he have in a game, or the type of thing that you normally would do for publicity. But that was probably the hardest. My name got into Time magazine, into Newsweek magazine, several things, because I had to be quoted a couple of times. And our owner at the time, a man by the name of Ralph Wilson, did not want to have the football team involved very much. In other words, stay back as far as you can. Don't be talking more than you have to about these things, because the more you say, the more chance that, they knew it was going to be a big court battle and everything, and you could get caught right in the middle of something by saying the wrong thing. But anyway, it was because OJ had been a Buffalo Bills player first, drafted by the Bills. everybody called Buffalo immediately and thought we would know everything about a murder that happened in Southern California. And we didn't know much about it. But anyway, it was an interesting time. It was a stressful time because every morning show wanted something on TV, and who could we talk to, and all these different newspaper writers that wanted to get information. So it was an interesting couple of weeks when we were dealing with a murder trial. So I think that's about all my questions. Oh, can you tell us about your role at the Monday Quarterback Club? We had just because it's on your question, the Monday Quarterback Club was a group that met for lunch on the day after home game. The day after home game. So if we had 8 home games, we had 8 luncheons. And it was almost all business people, bankers and lawyers and judges and some college people, students and stuff. And we had a club that basically every week we would have our general manager come in and talk, maybe a former player, an alumni player come in and talk, and a bunch of football fans who wanted to talk about football. And I was involved as the vice president of that group and basically in charge of the program for each week. And so it was a fun thing to do. A little bit hectic during the season to have to be coordinating speakers and stuff for luncheons while trying to do the rest of your job, but it worked out okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us. I learned a lot. I'm really looking forward to trying to get into the sports field. So thank you.
What have you done? What have you done so far?
Well, I worked on campus for a little bit in the Office of Student Affairs, but besides that, nothing really. I'm just trying to go to graduate.
Getting into sports, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Well, I would say try to get some practical experience, whatever it is. I don't know where you live, but wherever you live, see if you can get involved in helping to publicize. I used to say any sport that's playing, if there's a girls softball league or baseball leagues or soccer leagues and things like that, to get the experience of having to help publicize those things. It may just be a small little paper, but information. And now it's all, you can be doing a lot of internet stuff, putting out a press release on the internet. You don't even have to have anything printed anymore, but doing the publicity and involving sports teams is really a good first step for you to get some practical experience.
Awesome.
Wherever you live.
I'm from Essex County, New Jersey.
But I'm just saying, I'm saying wherever you live, you can do that by going in, and people many times are glad to have volunteers to do that. If you go in there and say, I need to be paid $10 an hour in order to do some of this work, it probably is not going to happen. It's not necessarily a job for income, even though that's hard for students. I mean, you got to pay a lot of bills. I understand that, but if you can get in and be a volunteer at the beginning and show the type of things that you can do, that's an important part of getting a good background for a job.
Hopefully, we'll see where the path goes. Hopefully next year I could try to get my foot into the door at Syracuse and see what happens. But yeah,
my son went to Syracuse. He was a manager for the football team there for 4 years when he wasn't big enough to play, but he was involved with the football team for those 4 years. And I got a chance to be on campus quite a bit. And they've got a good athletic program now, in all sports, obviously. And now, basketball, men's and women's basketball. And they have a good lacrosse team. They got a lot of good athletic teams there, football.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm just gonna hang out for a few more minutes and then I'll probably close the meeting in 5 to 8 minutes. So if anyone has anything else, feel free to stick around, but that's all I got so far. So thanks everyone.
Thank
Okay.
you so
Thank you.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks
Okay.
so much. Thanks
Great.
for coming,
Thank
Dennis.
you.
Okay.
It's great to have
Glad,
you.
glad to meet Wait, what year did you graduate from high school?